Let's go with Amanda in Texas. Forgiveness. Wants to talk about forgiveness. Christians preach about forgiveness no matter what. I don't think we should forgive abusers. Pronouns are she, her. How you doing, Amanda?
Hey, how are y'all?
Doing good.
Hi.
So specifically, what did you want to call in about?
Well, I don't mean to plug anything right here, but I just wanted to give some context. There's a bill being pushed called the Stop Institutionalized Child Abuse Act about the troubled teen industry. And I was actually at a Christian it was really a reform school. And I was Christian for a long time until during the pandemic when I became an apostate. And the main thing I remember about Christianity is they were talking about, oh, you have to forgive people, or else you're going to feel guilty. And there was even kind of like a group therapy session back at that school where the pastor got up there and he had this like big heavy chair and he was like, see, you need to forgive people or else you're going to be carrying this chair around. And he threw the chair across the room and was like, that's what it feels like to forgive people. So there's a lot of abuse that goes on at those homes. And I really haven't forgiven the abusers there. And I don't really feel like it's eating me alive or that I'm like carrying a chair on the back of my shoulder. But everyone's like, everybody in the Christian society, and even my mother, who's not even really a Christian anymore, they keep saying, you don't forgive them, it's going to eat you alive. But I really don't think it is.
I just think this is a really good example of how religious people totally just don't understand the human psyche and like how things work, right? Like I personally think that idea of like being forced to forgive everyone who's ever harmed you in any way is just one of the other ways that they can push kind of the escaping accountability for people who are actually like abusers. I personally don't think that, like, I agree with you that like there's no need to forgive everybody. You don't have to do anything. If that becomes part of your process of kind of moving on, then that's great. You can forgive somebody without ever talking to them. There's a lot of these false ideas, I think, that are out there that you need to forgive or it's going to do something harmful to you. That's another way that is right. That's further victim blaming. The idea that you have to have some sort of closure, you have to let the person know that you forgive them. That's not like, there's nothing in like, I think, psychology that shows that that's a necessary part of moving forward after being traumatized or going through something. I think that one of the other kind of like harmful things it does, that message, is it can cause you as somebody who has had something done to you to bypass whatever level of kind of grieving or processing that you need to do when you're pushed to forgive somebody or to get past something before you're ready. I think that that's one of the harms in that idea. And then the other thing I thought about with that is it's one of those ideas that it's not even just like a Christian or a religious idea. It's kind of leaked into like larger culture too. This idea that like you have to forgive, right, and love covers a multitude of sins. You'll hear that kind of stuff from even non-religious people. So I think it's just one of those areas that we need to kind of combat. That's maybe not the healthiest psychological approach for everybody, and we need to stop pushing that on victims.
Right. And the reason I thought it was more of a Christian thing is because I'm a teacher, so I show videos all the time. And we were looking at the Holocaust, and there was this one, I can't remember her name. She was a victim of the twin experiments there. Yeah. And she had, quote, forgiven all of them and was trying to move on. But then there was a section of another Jewish person who was like, how could she do that? How could she forgive them? And I thought about it and I was like, well, maybe this is coming from more of a Christian context, because they teach you that Christ suffered so much for your sins and he forgave everybody, and that's why you need to do it. You need to be like Christ.
Yeah.
So,
what was that first thing you said about you have to? Sorry, I just blanked on something there, but just being forced to move forward with something before you're ready. I don't agree with that at all. And I think that people will take whatever they need from the situations. For some people, I will help them it will help them to move forward if they choose to like look at the person that harmed them with some sort of compassion. I know that like that is a part of it for some people, but it's definitely not the way that you can actually like process trauma and move forward.
It
Right.
seems odd
I
to
feel
be
like
forced.
Yeah.
It seems like a weird
Right.
notion. It's like it's kind of like what's expected of you in that sense. That I don't know how genuine that someone could feel even having all that forgiveness when it's like predicated on something
Yeah.
external.
Yeah.
And the idea that you can't move forward unless you forgive somebody. I've definitely moved forward in my life, like, and people are still like, well, why haven't you forgiven them? Why haven't you? I was like, and I'm always just like, because they abused me and countless other teenagers. And they say, well, you need to move past that. And I'm like, I have. I'm a functioning adult now with a job and students who I want to protect, you know?
Do you think too that it kind of speaks to this inability of like our Western culture to just acknowledge that anger is a valid emotion, and that we're like that is there's nothing wrong with being angry about something, that there's a purpose to that. Our anger tells us something. It helps us to stay safe sometimes by continuing to like have maybe some anger about something. That might be a way that you're protecting yourself from future harm in that area. So I'm just reminded of that idea that there's a whole host of emotions that we're not really supposed to feel. They kind of get demonized in a lot of ways, especially for women, you know, like these ideas of being angry or resentful or catty or whatever, these other things, which are real emotions that you shouldn't have to deny you're experiencing. Right. So it's just it seems like it's all on this fundamental misunderstanding of what harm does to somebody and what it does to them in the body level, physical level, and on their emotional level, and what good processing looks like. And it's not the same for everybody.
Right. Yeah. And I don't understand this idea of like, just because you haven't forgiven somebody doesn't mean you haven't moved on or, quote, let it go. I hear that all the time because I started being an activist for this get the government to crack down on the troubled teen industry. And people are like, Amanda, just let it go. Just let it go. It was a long time ago. And it doesn't click in my head.
Well, and see, there's a good example of where
would say that.
There's a good example of an emotion like anger being beneficial because it's causing you to pursue this thing that you see has a greater good to it. And that's, I'm sure that in somewhere in there, that was fueled at some point, or maybe continues to be fueled by a level of anger. And so why is it so important that you aren't allowed to hold on to that? Like, it's an important emotion.
Right.
Yeah. Especially if it serves as like a pretty stark reminder, right? In some cases, like, I don't know why you would abandon that.
There's some things we should stay angry about.
Yeah. I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I definitely agree.
Yeah, because that kind of notion is like, it's like saying that I should forgive, all the. It's like in that case, I can't forgive. It's like I have to forgive this whole entire structure where religion is leaked in so heavily into legislation or how I live my life or what I can even say about me being an atheist without other people looking at me strange, right? Where it's like.
Right.
This notion where if I'm supposed to forgive, like, because then I'm expected, like, by that token to forgive what's instilled that in the first place. And fuck no, I'm not going to, would never do it. I want it I want it gone. I want people to come to this conclusion, not forcefully, but I want them to come to the conclusion rationally, right? And if I have to just forgive it, then there's no process, right? So that forgiving all, members in the set type of thing just seems like, it's like the con man type of grabbing somebody in. It just sounds attractive, right? It just sounds like, wow, how selfless. I want to be a part of that. It's greater than myself because I get angry and I don't forgive somebody for, stealing my sandwich at lunch or whatever. I mean, but sorry.
And it's really hard for me to explain to these, to the people that tend to combat me when I say, I'm not going to forgive them. I don't want to. It's hard for me to get it to click with them that I really don't feel like it's hurting me to hold on to this I guess, grudge, you could call it, or this anger or this hurt for what happened to me. It doesn't hurt me to hold on to it. And I feel like they just like don't believe me or maybe it's the whole like, well, you hurt, you just don't realize it. But no, I'm not. I think okay.
I think there's just needs there's a greater need to have conversations about how we have like healthy interactions and why it's okay to like stay angry about something, why it's okay to have your boundaries, why it's okay to create distance between yourself and situations or people or institutions. And I think I just that whole area needs to be explored more, and more acceptance about how different people deal with things differently. And just because somebody still seems angry about something doesn't mean that they're like in this unhealthy place or that they are being affected in a negative way. I do think it's just a way to kind of, push the whole thing away. Like, no, we don't want to deal with this. It makes us uncomfortable that you're still upset about it. I would just prefer it if you just forgave everybody and we went back to this thing where everybody kind of gets over things quickly because it's much easier for everyone else. I think that's something we need to work on as a society.
I definitely agree with you on that. And a lot of people have said, oh, you're being immature while holding on to it. I just think to myself, well, no, I'm not. I'm not turning my back on it and, quote, forgiving. I'm facing it straight on. Doesn't that take more maturity than to just ignore it? And they just don't believe me.
Yeah. Well, just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, you know how you feel about it. And so people can keep saying that to you, and people can see it however they want to see it. And that's not really like, we're not going to change anything overnight over how we're allowed to act over things.
Yeah. Don't let people have that type of power over you in that sense. That's one of the, I don't think I've applied it perfectly, but it's one of the better things that I've applied more recently, is not letting have, especially when it's something like that's not going to change, right? That your disapproval is not going to change that fact, right? So, I'm not going to let you have that power over me. It's just, no, I'm not going to do it. And better yet, I know I'm right because it's serving as a reminder for me in the future for potentially people like yourself, right? To avoid that. And so, Amanda, I wanted to say as well, because I think I heard you say you're a teacher. I wanted to say thank you for being an educator. We really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Definitely.
Of course. I